Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Disney. Disney has definitely lost their magic, and now they've been talking about selling off all or part of their company before the company totally collapses and becomes completely unmanageable. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Disney stock has been down. It's not lower than its last 52 weeks. It's close. Disney's lowest stock price in the last 52 weeks is $84.07. It's roughly $86 today. It could easily get lower than that $84.07 until it does. It's not really devastating. It's bad, but it's not devastating. This is a little bit worse than bad. Disney stock getting downgraded because of concerns over ESPN. This is where financial analysts are saying, hey, we don't think you should really buy this stock right now. There are too many questionable things going on. We're not quite sure what's going to happen with the company. We think it's too risky to buy at the current price. That happens to companies sometimes, but that is kind of bad. This is very bad. This is of great concern to me. This is something I've been warning about in other videos just based on my finance background. When a company's credit rating gets downgraded and they have a lot of debt, and Disney does still have a lot of debt, that's a bad sign. And I have said specifically, don't be so worried about Disney as long as their stock doesn't go below the last 52 weeks and as long as their debt isn't downgraded. And once their debt is downgraded, that means they're a little bit less likely to pay off all of their debt than they were prior to that downgrade. So that's a concern. This analyst is not saying that Disney can't pay their debts, they can't pay their bills, but it's a big negative. For me, it's even more negative than the stock price because that goes to the basic soundness of the business. Is it solid enough to do what it needs to do going forward? And according to this analyst, it's a little bit less solid than they thought it was as far as being able to pay all of their debts. A judge recently rejected Disney's attempt to get rid of DeSantis' special district lawsuit. This is a complicated subject, but the bottom line is Bob Iger is very well aware that there is zero chance, I mean really zero chance, that Disney will win the lawsuit to retain control of their special district in Florida. They're not going to retain control of it. They tried to pull a fast one. DeSantis is suing them. The state government is going to maintain control over its land. The federal government is ultimately not going to allow Disney, without permission of the state legislature and the government, to approve them controlling a district or essentially like their own county government. It has to be constantly okay with the state government or it's not going to continue. In the meantime, Iger knows this. He's smart. He's buying time with these lawsuits because it helps him to buy a little time until it gets finally resolved and it's clear that Disney has lost. But that said, it's not good news if they lose that lawsuit. It doesn't help. The Wrap has an interesting article. No more Mr. Nice Guy Bob Iger may just want to sell Disney and be done. The CEO's uncharacteristic antagonism towards strikers may point to a mergers and acquisitions state of mind. I'm not 100% sure that Bob Iger being stressed out necessarily means that they're going to sell the company and have a mergers and acquisitions state of mind, but it is an interesting article. Let's get into it. For decades, Disney CEO Bob Iger has been a revered media titan beloved by both employees and Wall Street, a rare feat and tricky balancing act. That's what made it so surprising to the creative community when the usually friendly and disciplined Iger, fresh off his private jet at Sun Valley, chose a setting known as, quote, summer camp for billionaires to castigate writers and actors for their, quote, very disturbing strike and economic expectations that are just, quote, not realistic, adding that Hollywood has been a great business for all of these people. SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher joined voices across entertainment in calling Iger's comments tone deaf and, well, rich for someone who reportedly makes more than 500 times the median salary of Disney employees. The issue is this. Disney has been getting absolutely crushed. It's been one disappointment after another theatrically, but also with streaming. The theme parks aren't doing well. There are all kinds of problems that Disney has. ESPN is not going to be viable in a few years because cable companies can't continue to pay $8 to $9 per subscriber and have that add up to the kind of revenues that Disney is used to anymore as people cut the cord and no longer subscribe to cable. So he has to kind of rework that entire business model, which really is not something that Iger has ever done. He's never reworked business models. Guardians of the Galaxy is an example of what they expected from all of their Marvel projects, from all of their major projects. Little Mermaid was supposed to do this, $800 million worldwide. That's what they expected from Little Mermaid. That's what they expected from Haunted Mansion. This weekend, Haunted Mansion is getting absolutely destroyed. Haunted Mansion opens as the lowest Disney ride-based movie since Eddie Murphy's original. It made $23 million on opening weekend on a $158 million budget, plus the cost of marketing. It's going to be another major financial disappointment, and it also kind of makes you wonder, what could they possibly do to turn this around? There kind of is like nothing they can do to turn this around, because the reason it's doing so badly is, first of all, the subject matter, kind of like, who cares? There was no buzz for this movie before it came out. But in addition to that, anything that's Disney now is negatively viewed by family, by parents, by most normal people. They see it's a Disney project and they go the other way. And it used to be completely the opposite. The Disney brand was just known for quality. It was known for originality. It was known for creativity. People were interested and willing to give Disney a shot. Now it's the opposite. So why has Mr. Nice Bob Iger turned into Dr. Evil? It all may be because he's got an industry upending deal, a sale of Disney on his mind, and his primary audience is Wall Street, not Hollywood talent. For this CNBC's interview and for this meeting where he's at Sun Valley, he did need to get across to everyone that, number one, he was going to be around for the next 2 years, which is something he announced clearly there. His deal was up like just the day before through 2026 for him to stay as CEO. He also made it publicly known he wasn't joking around. He really does want to make a deal and sell ABC if he can, and their other linear networks, cable networks. He also made it known he's looking for partners for ESPN wherever he can find them. Keep in mind, Iger was speaking to CNBC, a direct megaphone to Wall Street trading floors as you can get. His comments may reflect a desire to present the best possible economic case to his Sun Valley audience, other captains of industry, and the financial community whom he needs on his side to cross the goal line. Big ticket mergers and acquisitions requires to have stability in the business rather than transforming basic industry economics. Uncertainty and change do not translate well into higher price tags for assets. The author's been told this from both sides of the table in media acquisition deals and has experienced it firsthand. And the idea is you need a steady business so you know how much money is coming in, so you can understand what your return on investment is going to be, what your payments for debt, if there's debt that's part of the deal. Disney took on debt to do the Fox acquisition. It wasn't all debt. It was half debt and half extra Disney stock. And if you take on debt to buy one of Disney's properties, like let's say ABC or something, you need to know how much cash is going to come out of it to be able to cover the cost of that debt. And that's how you get a bigger return on investment. When you spend the money to acquire the thing, you put as little down as possible and add as much debt as possible, but you need to know that you can pay the interest for all that. It's finance. Analysts strongly believe Iger is considering a sale of Mouse House assets. He all but put a for sale sign on the ABC network in that same CNBC interview. Adding credibility to this mergers and acquisitions scenario are Iger's recent comments that linear television may not be core to Disney's business. Comments he later tried to walk back. Even ESPN, once a sacred cow, is sacred no more as Iger seeks outside investors and partners to help fund the network's transition to streaming. He's looking to also do a deal with Major League Baseball, with NFL, with sports leagues, and it's very smart for him to do that. The sports leagues, to be able to maintain the kind of revenues they've been getting, really do have to be partners somehow in whatever the streaming business is going to be. Because remember, they're going to lose a lot of revenue. It's not going to be the same kind of revenue they could have got when literally every basic cable subscriber had to pay into ESPN. That business is changing really, really drastically. That alone would be enough that it would be very difficult for Iger or really anyone else to manage that kind of transition. Iger has like 5 or 6 problems like that right now, from the streaming to the screwed up intellectual properties For their problems with theatrical, now their problems with theme parks, it's one thing after another. This may well explain why Iger returned last November in the first place. For a man who had done it all at Disney, transforming the company into a franchise mega-hit machine with Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, and the Fox studio, why come back unless you have one more career-capping act in mind? Iger had to come back because Bob Chapek really couldn't keep up with all of Iger's businesses that Iger acquired and merged into Disney. They have way too many different divisions, way too many different brands. It's far too complicated. And the only thing they've done to evolve those businesses is launch a streaming service that's now lost more than $11 billion and make everything woke to alienate all the existing fan bases who were more than willing to spend unlimited amounts of money on the brands that they own. And there was no way that Bob Chapek could manage all of that. Iger can't manage all that either. So it's really turning into a mess. The fact that Disney just re-upped Iger's contract for 2 more years through 2026 is utterly consistent with this scenario and a selling state of mind. That's just enough time to do a deal. Corporate mergers and acquisitions take several months, if not years, particularly for a deal regulators would certainly scrutinize. Disney's acquisition of Fox's entertainment assets took well over a year from start to finish, and Time Warner's $85 billion sale to AT&T took nearly 2 years. All of Iger's schmoozing powers would be needed to get a deal done. To do anything substantial is going to take a year. Then it takes some time to close in addition to that. But even before something gets done, people have to say yes to a deal. It has to make sense. If it's a public company that's doing a deal, like if Apple was to buy Disney, it's something it would have to put to a vote to Apple shareholders. If Apple's stock was negatively affected, they may decide not to do the deal. It's not a trivial thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. The more that Disney continues this woke agenda and continues to burn bridges and alienate parents and families with their product, the worse it gets for them and the more impossible it is for them to fix the business. Apple and Disney have been closely aligned in the media business since 2006, which is the year Disney bought Pixar from Steve Jobs, and Apple began selling Disney movies on iTunes. After Jobs died, Iger sat on Apple's board until 2019. The companies know each other intimately, and that shared DNA and mutual respect bode well for a post-sale integration. A complementary company culture is necessary for any successful mergers and acquisitions. Very true, the companies would have to fit together well, but the problem is, it seems like all of the management is bad at Disney. Forget Iger. Just whether it's Marvel or Lucasfilm or Pixar, nothing they're doing is actually working. The one thing that worked was James Gunn Guardian of the Galaxy Volume 3. That, Avatar 2 worked, but, James Cameron doesn't run the studio. And similarly, James Gunn is unavailable to do anything for Disney anymore because he's part of the Warner Brothers Discovery team. He runs their DC studio, with Peter Safran, of course. It's very unlikely that you have a company like Apple that would go and buy all of a company like Disney unless they felt really confident about the management they had in place. And they're very aware that Bob Iger is not the manager at Disney. It's all of the individual people that run all of the individual divisions, but that are all really suffering right now. To be clear, Cook certainly wouldn't want to buy all of Disney's assets like its theme parks, for example. Apple, in great need of franchise content and a deeper content pool for Apple TV Plus to more effectively compete with Netflix and Max, would likely seek to acquire just Disney's prized entertainment assets, leaving the theme parks and TV networks for others to pick over. Iger has walked that mergers and acquisitions tightrope before. In the Fox deal, he only picked up Fox's entertainment assets, leaving Fox News to be Rupert Murdoch's alternative universe. A similar structure could grease an Apple-Disney deal past regulators in a hyper-competitive streaming-first world. The one major plus for Apple is that it has so much cash, it would not have a problem financing any kind of a deal. They wouldn't need to be paying these massive interest rates we have now, and having that kind of a cash for a deal like this is pretty unique. Now faced with the added gut punch of looming transformational AI, selling makes sense. It's like that pivotal ending scene in The Usual Suspects when Chaz Palminteri sits back, takes in the entire picture of clues on the wall, and drops his cup of coffee at his great epiphany. And for Iger, the Kaiser Soze in this movie, selling to Apple represents his dramatic escape. The writers and actors strike disrupts that outcome. Iger may say he loves talent, but his history shows he really loves a deal. Iger ultimately answers to Wall Street like any CEO, and that doesn't bode well for major concessions in the current Hollywood strike maelstrom. Iger may have built his reputation as Hollywood's nice guy, but his last act may be a calculating executive straight out of central casting. Here's something else that's interesting from Hollywood Reporter: the strike's side effect, a cash hoard for studios. As Hollywood enters earnings season amid a double walkout, it's becoming clear that in the short term, the work stoppage is adding to struck companies' bottom line. What will CEOs do with the windfall? So because of the double strikes going on in Hollywood, studios like Disney have a lot more cash and even more profitability than they otherwise would have, because they're not spending money on content the way they were forced to spend money on content. So if you think that Bob Iger is going to be rushing to end the strike, I'd like to see that in the comments, but it doesn't seem like Bob Iger would want the Hollywood strikes to end, because he seems to want to hold on to as much cash as he can for as long as he can. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.